For educator is educator state name. All right, because the participant and educator for final match already complete, I will open the session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to International Speech and Debate Competition 2020, organized by OIC Youth Indonesia and UKM Bahasa Flat, supported by Embassy of State of Palestine. This competition is also cooperate with UNAS TV, 5TV, UPNVJ, and Radio Telekomunikasi Cipta Universitas Indonesia FM as media partner. My name is Raihan Yasmin Huzaima. As today's Master of Ceremony, I will lead you all in this opening session. Firstly, I would like to say congratulations for Universitas Lampung and Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha who have passed the semi-final round yesterday and going to final match today. Okay, once more, I want to remind for the participants to rename your display name before we start. All right, next slide, Kak. All right, so today rundown is we have 10 minutes for drawing for side and then motion release and also cast building for 20 minutes. And then the debate match will approximately 1 hour session and then 10 minutes for feedback and closing. Next. All right, so the first we have already checked in and then the motion and draw release, cast building, debate, after debate, verbal adjudication, and then Zoom official announcement about the winner will be announced via Zoom tonight. Next. All right, so after you guys entering the breakout rooms, to all participants, when the cast building starts, please give your team speakers order to the chairperson of your room. Next. Today we have 3 adjudicators. The first we have Mr. M. Sharani Rofi, PhD. He is academician and lecturer at University of Indonesia, Graduate School of Strategic Studies. And then the second we have Mr. Gilang Argifari Lukman, BA, Master Philosophy student in Modern Middle Eastern Studies, University of Oxford, United Kingdom. And the last we have Ms. Sutaba Tariq, as representative Pakistan at the first OIC Young Leader Summit and also the regional chair IAPSS Asia. Next. All right, next we will draw for the position side. The name comes out from the will be the government and the rest will be the opposition. All right, so we have Universitas Negeri Padang in the government side of the team and Universitas Lampung will be on opposition side. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm
Sorry, we
sorry.
are not UNP.
Okay, we are sorry because there is a technical mistake.
Okay, okay.
Alright, so the result is Universitas Lampung will be on the government side of the team, and Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha will be on the opposition. So we are going to have motion release. Alright, so today's motion is this House regret the normalization relationship between OIC member state and Israel. Okay, that's the motion for final match, and we will move to case building for 20 minutes and then the debate will begin. Is there any question? All right, I guess no. So that's the motion, and good luck, everyone.
Halo, Dias. Astrid. Halo.
Yes, Mas.
Ini ini nunggu siapa?
Ini case building, Mas. Masih kan 20 menit.
Oke. Si itu Rutaba, dia bisa hadir?
Dia datangnya pas debatnya mau dimulai, Mas.
Oke. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mas.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am audible. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Welcome to the English Debating Competition of International Speech and Debate Competition 2020, organized by OIC of Indonesia and UKM Bahasa Flat and supported by Embassy of Philippines for Indonesia. Here we will begin this final match. The motion for this debate is: this House regret the normalization relationship between OIC member state and Israel. I am Lulu Nazila Putri, will be the chairperson, and Miss Siti Khairunnisa will be the timekeeper. I'm going to call one by one for checking the persons. The government team is from Universitas Negeri Lampung with Miss Syafa as the first speaker, Miss Ayu Mona as the second speaker, and Mr. Andre Agusti Wijaya as the third speaker. Reply speech will be delivered by Miss Ayu Mona. Everyone in the government team, can you test your microphone on? Hello? Universitas Negeri Lampung, can you test your microphone on?
Yes. Check, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay.
And the opposition team is from Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha with Miss Tania as the first speaker and Miss Nia Loviana as the second speaker and Mr. Rahul Krishna as the third speaker. And the reply speech will be delivered by Miss Tania Indri. Everyone in the opposition team, can you test your microphone on?
Yeah, we are here, Kak.
Okay, thank you. And our adjudicator for today's match is Miss Rutaba Tarik from Pakistan and Sharoni Rofi from Indonesia and Gilang Al-Ghifari from Indonesia. I will read the guidelines again, and first, the participant must be on camera while speaking, including POI. POI can be done by unmuting the microphone immediately. The duration of speaking for each speaker is 7 minutes 20 seconds. There is the duration for the participant who lost their connection in the middle of the debate. The maximum conversation is 2 minutes per participant. POI will be open at time after 1 minute with question sign and will be closed after 6 minutes with minute sign from the timekeeper and X sign means time is up. For conducting POI, the question can be directly unmuted by the microphone to request for POI. The maximum duration for POI is 10 seconds. Before we start the debate, maybe adjudicators have something to say to the participants.
Yes,
Can I start? Yes,
Okay.
Ms. Sharon, you want to start?
What? I'm sorry.
Can I start, or does Mr. Shahroni want to start?
Okay, maybe you want to start first?
Okay, sure. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this debate competition. I just want to say that this subject is something that I am researching intensively here in Oxford. So I would really take a very careful note on the matter part. For sure that the other parts of the assessments are important, but in this very timely subject, it's very important to really put due attention to the substance of your matter. That might be my only message to all of you.
Okay, thank you, Kak Dilan. Shani, do you have something to say to the participants?
Yes, please you can start. But probably Rutaba had something to say.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to wish the debaters good luck and the teams good luck. I'm sure that they put in a lot of hard work considering that they've won subsequent rounds and made it to the final, which means that you did something right and you did something better than the rest of the team, which means that you already have an idea of what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Focus on your strengths, you've got it in the bag. Give us something that we enjoy as listeners, and something that we can, if even after we're done with the debate, we can take with us after the sessions, right? The one thing I did notice last time, I want to just like give a word of advice is take at least 1 or 2 POIs, guys, because that does really factor into the judgment that I personally make. But like Mr. Jalan said earlier, the matter is everything, above and beyond everything. So yeah, good luck. Congratulations for having made so far. May the best team win.
Okay, thank you for Ms. Protaba. And so, without any further ado, under the motion, this House will the normalization relationship between OIC member state and Israel. You have 7 minutes, 20 seconds for each speaker, and 2 minutes for reply speech. Let's start the debate. To open the debate, I would like to invite the first speaker of government team, Miss Shafa. Here.
So, am I audible?
Yes.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, normalization relationship is where you try to have a good relation after some conflict that occur within the RIC member state and also Israel. But the problem, this normalization relationship is actually not favorable within the OIC member state itself because the independence of Palestine concern will be hard to be achieved by this normalization. Therefore, we are regretting the normalization relationship between OIC member state and also and Israel in order to create peace within the OIC member with a smooth and diplomacy way. So, this debate, I will talk about 3 things. First, what is normalization under this are going to be look like, and second, what is the interest of the OIC state member, and third, why this normalization is not in line with the interest of the member of OIC state. Going to the first, what is normalization relation that going to be held with Israel? First, this normalization relationship will be more to cooperate with the Israel, right? In terms of economy, politics, military, etc. In terms of economy, in the end of the day, Israel will tend to have a free trade from OIC state member, so the income will be increased under their side, and also this will make the Israel more powerful to attack the Palestine in the end of the day. And also in terms of politics, for example, this normalization, this kind of cooperation will tend to bring the Israel into a diplomacy in the United States. So the Israel will be more supported by this OIC member, which is really hard.
Yes.
And also this in the end of the day will going to be acknowledging the Israel to give a support to the Israel itself, which this will be more harm because it will it will not give the Palestine to have their sovereignty, because Israel will tend to have a big support and have a big power to run their agenda to attack the Palestine itself. So based on this, we say that normalization is actually hard. So what is going to be second? What is the interest of the OIC member state itself? The interest is going to have the defense and security of each member, and also to create a peace and to give the sovereignty of the Palestine itself. But look on Israel, on how they normalize the relationship with the Israel. Israel is tend to cannot be cooperate with the OIC member state itself. Taking example, for example, like in the past that Israel promised to have a peace with the Palestine, but in the end betray their promises. Imagine if this actually happen, if the normalization is happen, then Israel will have more power, so they will more having a chance to attack the Palestine itself. Therefore, it is not in line actually with the interest of the OIC member state itself to give sovereignty, national defense, etc. And also we say that by this normalization relationship is going to be more harm because it will break the unity within the IC member state itself. For example, that Palestine that try to have a sovereignty with a diplomatic way, but since the Uni Emirat Arab not favorable with the Palestine itself, try to have another way of solution. Therefore, it is actually will break the unity within the member itself. And also like a Turkey that don't want have a normalization, but since the UEA want a normalization, so this backlash of each member will be going to be harm the unity. So in the end of the day, this will create the untrust from the Turkey and also towards the Uni Emirat Arab itself, for example, to run their agenda together. In the end, this also will harm the Uni Emirat Arab itself to run their agenda because they no longer have the same voice. So therefore, we regret this normalization relationship. But comparatively under our side, if we regret this, the unity will still exist because we have one voice to run our agenda. We have the same interest to be run, and also Palestine will be more thankful to the OIC member state because they have the same voice, they have the same solution to achieve the sovereignty of Palestine, and etc. So this unity will be still more exist in our side of the house. If the opposition try to play on the try to say that between Palestine also Israel is about the politic problems, we say that even if there's a politic problems, this going to be more solved but not with normalization the relationship, but in another way. For example, diplomacy within the United Nations to support the Palestine within the United Nations, rather than normalization, rather than cooperate with terms of economic, politics, etc. And also look on status quo where progressivity is actually under our side. Look at if we have the unity in terms of this OIC member state, Israel will have low power because there is an oppress from the OIC member state to not attacking the Palestine, to have a better way of solution rather than relationship to the Israel itself. So we say better if you not normalize this relationship before we close.
The first speaker of the government team spent 6 minutes 23 seconds. To begin the case of opposition team, I would like to call the first speaker of the opposition team, Miss Sania Indri, here.
Am I audible? My speech will be starting in 3, 2, 1. Panels, we understand that Palestine is panels, we understand that OIC is actually the second largest organization after the United States, after the United Nations. And here we would like to deliver is actually this kind of biggest organization will like bring prosperity when they are actually working together with other country, especially in this Israel, to like showing their own purpose of being this kind of big organization and bring up harmony as what they would like to achieve. The second one, they could change perspective. Also, they can be mutual in order to helping the OIC member to get the prosperity as what they would like to achieve in here. But before I go to the main point of my arguments, I would like to rebut what the first speaker of the affirmative side of the House already said before. Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with the meaning of normalization. Normalization means base structure formation process to back to the normal situation in which in here we would like to say OIC member would like to have a kind of good relation between their member also Israel. In here, the normalization will bring up a very good condition in which we would like to erase the term of enemy also mutual. So the thing that we would like to justify in here, a normalization, which is we understand the formation process to back to normal situation, we believe this OIC member state as the member, and we would not let the Israel being the member. So no, thank you. So it means that the thing that would like to justify is Israel as the mutual in here in order to work together in the term of military education, support also trading partner for OIC member in order they would like to bring up the prosperity in each other. No, thank you. In each other between their member state, also Israel itself. The thing that they're bringing up in their arguments is just like normal with their assumption saying this kind of normalization will be hard to happen. But then they don't really give us a burden of proof in which condition if only this OIC member state will having a good relationship with Israel, it will be totally crumbling down the OIC member state itself because their focus only for the Palestine itself. Meanwhile, the thing that we believe in here, if only OIC member states having a normal relationship with Israel, it will bring up prosperity between the OIC member state, the whole OIC member state itself, including the Palestine. That's what we know, ladies and gentlemen. When they said the diplomacy kind of thing will be helping to solve the problem between Israel and also Palestine, but they don't really give us a burden proof or further explanation about what kind of diplomacy. Meanwhile, this kind of normalization relationship is just kind of like one of the example of the diplomacy that OIC members they would like to help their kind of member state, including Palestine, to have a good relation with Israel itself. As we know, ladies and gentlemen, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which was founded in 1969, having the motto to safeguard the interest and ensure the progress and well-being of the Muslim. It is actually would like to bring up the harmony, especially for the Muslim country. So when this kind of OIC member state having a normalized relationship between the member state, also the Israel itself, it will bring up so much advantages for the member state of the OIC member in the terms of as what I told you before, and I will deliver it more in my arguments. The first one, the military, education, health support, and trading partner. Well, ladies and gentlemen, moreover, they lead us to the assumption of imagine if Israel do their kind like a bad interest for the Palestinian stuff. But ladies and gentlemen, the term of normalization relationship means there is actually agreement between OIC member also Israel to give the same amount of help, or maybe kind of like the same amount of integration between OIC member state and Israel itself. They will make an agreement of to not harming each other. So this kind of normalization relationship will bring up the relation in which they will not bring any harm for each part. It is related from OIC member or the Israel itself also. Moreover, when they said that this kind of normalization relationship will bring up harms or will suspend the agenda to have Palestine, as what we believe in here as the negative side of the house, it will totally not suspending the agenda to have Palestine. Moreover, it will bring up the good diplomacy based on the normalization relationship, because OIC member as the term of organization that would like to help their own member state, as what we know Palestine is inside the OIC member. They would like to help each other to do a good communication each other, and then this term will be as the diplomacy side of the house. So their kind of arguments related to diplomacy totally supporting our own the negative side of the house arguments, ladies and gentlemen. Me as the first speaker talking about the justification, and my second speaker will be talking about further implication related to human resource development. Ladies and gentlemen, as what we know, OIC as the second largest organization in the world, if they have this kind of normalization relationship with Israel, as we know that Israel having a mutual with the United States of America, it will bring up good prosperity to OIC member states, because as we know, ladies and gentlemen, with the middle of Israel, also United States of America as the mega superpower, they will bring up so many things to help the OIC member state to be a more powerful organization. In the term of military, they can provide air force or kind of like something like that to help the prosperity between the member state. In education, they can do the students exchange without considering the OIC member state students as something bad in the Israel itself. Also, from the trading partner, OIC as what we know as second largest organization can be the good trading partner for the Israel itself, because when the trading partner, as we know, Israel is actually having a good relation with United States of America. They will helping the OIC member state to increase or to improve their income, in especially in trading partner in the world, ladies and gentlemen. So based on that kind of thing, we believe that and we totally agree with this kind of motion. Thank you.
The first speaker opposition and 7 minutes 29 Miss Ayumana, here too.
Tes, tes. I'm audible. Wait, belum. Tes, tes. I'm
Yes.
audible.
Yeah, you're audible.
I will start my speech. In 3, 2, 1. Judges, in this debate, we think that on how normalizations and instead of creating a good relationship between the OIC members and also the Israel. Also, the problem that exists is that the Palestine is itself. But we think that we don't understand about opposition's bench, because they neglect about why it is justified to have normalizations in terms of how to create a peacefully and also have each others. But we think that we think that in terms of creating a peacefully, what OIC members needs is that to support our members without seeing the bias or even the big on the bias or even the power country. We can say that OIC members have normalized sanctions with Israel just because Israel have a big power and a support system with the United States of America. We can the opposition that never engage, but why the superiority and superiority of the Israel can also manipulate or even to have a power to attack those kind of Palestina, because they have a bigger power to begin with, right? But two things in my speech, and the rebuttal will be intertwined in my speech. Why? The betterment that will create under our side of the house the moment we regret these normalizations. But second of all, why this is harmful to have normalizations at the very first place. Going to the first one. Why the betterment that will create under our side is that the moment we regret these normalizations. In terms of relationship, we think that the moment OIC members will not support only one country, this is also will create a good relationship into side. First of all, in terms of OIC members, and second of all, in terms of another country. First of all, in terms of OIC members, for example, like Indonesia or even United Arab Emirates will support all the country without taking the bias and also take opportunity from one side country. This is impact will create the united under our side of the house. The moment these members have create a check and balance. Check and balance that we want under our side of the house is the moment these kind of OIM members have the same interest to begin with, which is to support and also to fulfill the demand of the OIC members to begin with. The moment they have the same interest, it is easy for them to be participate in another's program managers each others. The moment there is a program, for example, all the members will also have a willingness to support or even participate in that regulations. Because why? Because first of all, they have the same interest to begin with, but second of all, they also have they also have the bonding on how they can they need to help and also have the OIC members to begin with. It means that under our side of the house will be happen is that hand to hand they will together to separate it a good bonding. It also with support and encourage another's OIC members in terms of speak up or even to resolve the problem that happened. We think that it's beneficial the moment all the member of OIC is able to cooperate. They will have more likely to create a peacefully inside internality. Because why? The moment there is other organizations that have the same interest, and also second of all, they also participate in some program. For example, it's easy for us to follow or even to have a socializations to speak up. For example, look on the problem of Israel and Palestine. The moment all the OIC members are not supporting Israel or even Palestine, but they are supporting on how the corporation later OIC Israel and Palestine problems. We think that this is also will benefit on the all OIC members. First of all, it is sending narrative when if the members of OIC is actually can cooperate each others. The moment they are have a good corporations, it means that it is sending narrative of the whole of society. If we have the trust issue on this program, right? But comparison under their side of the house, the moment they are only biased toward this kind of Israel, for example, this is also sending narrative on how this kind of OIC member is only only pursuing the Israel to begin with. That's why the harmful that exists is the untrust that already my first speaker already told you. No, thank you. Look on how the moment world that trying to not have a bias and the opportunity is also sending narrative on how this kind of a problem can resolve as soon as possible. Under their side of the house is only harmful the condition because they only prolong the problem that exists. For example, like Israel and Palestine. The moment they only support Israel, we think that on how the power of the Palestine will not exist under our side of the house. Peacefully under our side of the house is that how we can will not break the relationship with OIC members at the very first place. On how under our side of the house, the moment we are creating a good corporations under our side of the house, we will create a good relationship. It means that the moment there's a program, it's easy for us to have a support of each other. With this kind of programs, for example, it's easy for us to speak up, to have a donation, for example, or even trying to encourage all the members to have a good relationship inside of OIC members. This is also how the issue of OIC members will also separate a good news inside the whole of society. But second of all, why it is so harmful to have the normalization? We don't think that under the set of the house they talking about there is also the agreement, for example. But we are questioning the moment there is the agreement of OIC members and also Israel. Why in the end of the why in this current status quo the problem of Israel and Palestine will not have a solution under their side of the house. But at least under our side of the house, the moment we stop and also we regret those kind of normalizations, we try to open a mindset of the whole of society in terms of OIC members to not have a bias. The moment Israel have a big support system in terms of United States of America, we think that they're also more likely to choose this kind of Israel. We think that under our side of the house, we will not have to bias anymore, Madam Chair. Because why? Because we will create a picture fully. because that is the interest of OIC at the very first place. But lastly, on how this is harmful the conditions of member of IC itself is that on how there is no any communications of the OIC members. My first speaker told you on how the antrust that exists under their set of the house is that creating harmful the conditions. The moment there's the bias things that happen under their set of the house, we think that there is no any solution that creating by OIC members. This is also harmful the conditions. The moment sending narrative to whole of society, if the OIC members organization is cannot solve those kind of problem to begin with, we think that this is also the backlash the idea of the OIC members to have resolved this problem as soon as possible. Therefore, what the opposition need to prove to you, and first of all, why this is more likely not have the bias things on the OIC members toward the Israel to begin with, but second of all, on how the interest of the OIC members will also more likely happen under their side of the hand, and also to create a peacefully under their side of the house. We are very proud to propose.
Bicarain aja. Dia bilang kalau misalkan normalization itu bring up bias ke OIC member, jadi OIC member itu akan sangat parah ketika Israel di bawa bias ya.
Thank you. The second speaker of the government team spent 7 minutes 11 seconds. I would like to call the second speaker of the opposition team, Ms. Nyaloviana, here.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. So I would like to start my speech on 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about nice motion in this House regarding the normalization relationship between OIC member state and Israel. But ladies and gentlemen, before I start my argument, I would like to give some rebuttal regarding to the first and second speaker of the government set of House, ladies and gentlemen. Then, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, they're talking about this normalization will not help the Palestinian problems and it can solve the Palestinian problem. But ladies and gentlemen, the fact is that based on all attainment, that Palestinian problem is the main problem of OIC, ladies and gentlemen. So based on the normalization itself, if this normalization is happening, of course, this problem of Palestine will become the main core of the solving problems of the OIC, and of course, it will help as the rotations on how the problem itself can be solved by OIC and also become the bridge between the OIC, between the Palestinian and also the Israel by using this OIC, ladies and gentlemen. And as we know, also the Palestinian is also the member of the OIC. And no, thank you. And because of that, it's stating in the first Indian conference in which it initiated the normalization with Israel itself, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe it can help the solving problem of the Palestinian itself, ladies and gentlemen. And ladies and gentlemen, by three major points that they're stating by the first speaker itself asking us about why normalization, about the relation, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that Israel and OIC can have a mutual relation and can become a benefit, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because it's direct to the economic, ladies and gentlemen. We know that OIC is the second biggest organization after the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, and because of that, it can also give the benefit to the Israel not to attack Palestinian because of course we believe there is the MOU between the Israel and OIC if they want to make the normalization itself, ladies and gentlemen. The normalization is not happening directly if they want only the benefit itself, but they should make sure what is the after effect after the normalization itself, ladies and gentlemen. Because of that, we are not regretting the normalization between the Israel and also the OIC because it can become the bridge and the diplomacy between the Israel and the Palestinian itself, ladies and gentlemen. And ladies and gentlemen, the second one is about the interest of the OIC. They believe that it can neglect the interest of the OIC, but ladies and gentlemen, it can give mutual benefit, which is it can help the purpose of the OIC, which is to creating a better harmony for the world, ladies and gentlemen. Because of the harmony itself, that after the normalization is happening, of course Israel cannot attack the Palestinian itself, but they can change it into the kind of benefit that will get by the Israel from the OIC itself, ladies and gentlemen, and we agree with that. And so for the third one, Palestinian get helped by OIC. Of course, because the OIC is the Palestinian is the member of the OIC, which concerned with the Palestinian people. So we believe that this kind of normalization will help and make the OIC as a bridge of the diplomacy to the Israel. Next, is this distract the OIC? Of course, no, because by normalization doesn't mean that no, thank you, doesn't mean Israel joining the OIC, but they can give another perspective to the OIC on how they can operate the OIC itself, on how they can give another benefit, on how they can solving the problem, ladies and gentlemen, and I will deliver in my argument later on. And ladies and gentlemen, they're talking if we are bringing the political problems, but ladies and gentlemen, because of this normalization itself between the OIC and Israel, and it can direct into the United Nations, diplomacy can help to solve the problem, because we believe that OIC is in the aims to make the better world. No, thank you, better world, ladies and gentlemen. And this normalization can make the corporations and the mechanism is to inform the people, and we can end the conflict and the war and decrease the refugees which happening between the Palestinian and Israel itself, ladies and gentlemen. Next is about the peacefully. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are not agree with they saying that this normalization will not creating the peacefully itself, ladies and gentlemen. Because of the normalization, it can create the peacefully itself, because the relation between the OIC and Israel on the support of the OIC, Israel will not use it to attack Palestinian people, because they need to sign up to the MOU first before they have the on how they can cooperate with the OIC itself. And ladies and gentlemen, the bias which happens here is the government thinks that each country cooperates easier than they have a cooperation with OIC. Meanwhile, if they have the cooperation with OIC, it will help all the member, ladies and gentlemen. So by talking behind the BS by the government itself, they stand in the middle of the debate, ladies and gentlemen. So moving on to my arguments. First argument is about how the United Arab see the opportunities for trade and more creating relationship with Israel, ladies and gentlemen. United Arab has been placed with lots of people with a great military power. As example, F-35 and E-18G stealth fighter, ladies and gentlemen. So it will have the military relationship with USA and will help the OIC itself. Itself to protect and how to solve the problem within the power from USA, ladies and gentlemen. The second argument is about a strong bilateral relationship between USA and Israel may help OIC in solving OIC member state problem in economic and military field, which also affect other fields. Because of the bilateralism history on when the USA was the first country to recognize Israel as a state in 1948 and the first to recognize Jerusalem as the capital city of. And Israel has been America's most reliable partner in the Middle East. So this cooperation will help the OIC to solve the problem itself, ladies and gentlemen, not to make any restriction to that. And the third argument is about this cooperation will create a human resource development, ladies and gentlemen. So this one is direct to the what is the purpose of OIC itself, which can be helped by the Israel itself to solve the problem, to increase the value of modernism and tolerance, erasing extremism, fight terrorism against Islamophobia. This is the most important, ladies and gentlemen, because when they get against Islamophobia, between the correlation between the OIC and Israel, and when Israel has the relationship with United States, which is the superpower country, they can against the Islamophobia, which is being the aims of the OIC itself, ladies and gentlemen. We believe is Muslim is the religion which gives peace and harmony to the world, ladies and gentlemen, and that is why we are not agree with this motion which regretting the normalization between the Israel and OIC, because we believe that the aims of the OIC is to help the peacefully in the world, ladies and gentlemen, and it can also increasing the solidarity, ladies and gentlemen. We believe the more war that happens in the world will break up the people, and because of this normalization, will increase the solidarity itself between the Palestinian and Israel, ladies and gentlemen. There is no any war together if they can make this normalization based on what mechanism that we said before. It can make the cooperation between the members of the other problems in the OIC itself and give to the minority and Muslim, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe we can stand on this motion. Thank you.
Thank you to the Nia Luciana, second speaker of the opposition team, spent 7 minutes 27 seconds. I would like to invite the third speaker of the government team, Mr. Andre Agusti, here.
Check. Am I audible? Check. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to start my speech in before I'm start my speech. I think if opposition side of the house have EOI, just drop the text in the chat box. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Eju, I think the problem of opposition side of the house is that they generalize all of OIC member in status quo, normalize the relationship toward Israel. Meanwhile, the fact that happened in current status quo is that not all of OIC members support this agenda, Eju. Because of why? Because Indonesia, Malaysia, and Turkey doesn't even want Uni Emirat Arab to do that thing. I think their case is totally wrong in this debate. I'm still questioning what is the tangible example that is creating progressivity in current status quo. Because even if Uni Emirat Arab creating relationship between Israel, the progressivity there is no exist in status quo. War between Israel and Palestine still continue in current status quo right now. What I'm trying to say here is that their case is not giving tangible benefit at the end of the day. But secondly, I think they never engage the case on how the untrusted issues will going to be happen in the internal of IC member at the end of the day, because not all of the states support the agenda by the Uni Emirat Arab at the end of the day. I don't think it's going to be good, because when you don't have a same interest to creating peacefully in the Palestinian at the end of the day. Several rebuttals toward the case of opposition side of the house. First of all, they're trying to say that under the side of the house, it will creating better output from OIC members like education system, military, and such. Number one, they never prove to you why OIC member states not have capacity to that in terms of education and military and such. Because I think Turkey have good education system. Indonesia have strong military powers. Uni Emirat Arab have good economical background that I think by selling a lot of oil and such. What I'm trying to say here, to creating cooperation is not favorable for you it's not favorable when you cooperate with Israel, because there is a lot of nations that have capable to creating betterment inside of the OIC member, and there is happening in status quo right now, ladies and gentlemen. Because of why? Because there is a lot of capacity by other countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and such. I think that is favorable for us to stand in government side of the house. But secondly, they also assume that relationship between OIC member and Israel will give economic benefit. No, ladies and gentlemen. Because why? Because we don't need to do so, because I think Indonesia, Malaysia, and Turkey, and etc. still have good economical development, even we don't normalize the relationship with the Israel at the end of the day. So the case that opposition trying to claim is a very assumptive in this debate, because the fact that even if Indonesia not normalize the relationship toward the Israel, the fact that our economies are going to be good at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Lastly, they're trying to say that under the house, it will creating better voice inside the United Nations. Number one, they need to prove to you why the voice in the United Nations will not going to be biased toward the Israel, because I think Uni Emirat Arab currently tend to be support the Israel because they have strong support by United States of America. I don't think that the countries who speak up in the United Nations will focusing toward the suffering of Palestinians at the end of the day, because this is only because their voice at the end of the day only benefit for the Israel at the end of the day. The comparison under the house is that the voice of OIC member will likely to protect Palestinian people instead of giving benefit of Israel. Why is that the case? Because all of the OIC member have same interest, which is creating betterment for the Palestinian at the end of the day. Comparison under the house that their interest is not only protection for the Palestinian, but also giving benefit for the Israel at the end of the day. Because in terms of the normalization, there is a cooperation between the countries, right? There is economical interest, for example. There is also regulation and so on and so forth. I don't think the OIC member will make Israel becoming suffer at the end of the day. They never prove to us why their case is that likely to happen when Palestinian doesn't even support their agenda at all. The unity that they're trying to claim will not going to be happen, ladies and gentlemen, because it's impossible for Palestinian to unite it with the because there is impossible for Palestinian people to unite it with the Israel at the end of the day. I don't think their case favorable to stand in their debate at all, ladies and gentlemen. So I think opposition side of the house bring wrong case because they think. Not yet, because I think in status quo, all of OIC member normalize their relationship. Because in status quo, there's a problem by OIC internal state on how, for example, Turkey blame the decision by Uni Emirat Arab that normalize the relationship toward Israel. There is so the internal of OIC organization will not going to be good because right now they are separate by different value. This is the case that will going to be happen under the house. So I think it's still going to be good in term. I don't think it's still going to be good in term of unity at the end of the day, because the fact that in the internal of OIC will going to be separate on their side of the house. More than that, I think OIC member will be they trying to claim. Yes, before that.
You say that you neglect the and what benefit they get of if you regret this normalization, and what proof that you will give to us without the Israeli problem can be solved, and how you can make sure without normalization can help the Palestinian. Thank you.
I'm going to prove you why when the OIC member united at the end of the day, we will have a strong basis at the end of the day. Number one, because we have one interest comparison under your side has that the OIC members separated because they have a different interest at the end of the day. Under the has the voice in the United Nations will have some same umbrella at the end of the day. This is becoming the reason why that all of the countries will also becoming will tend to be support Palestinian instead giving economical background with the Israel and so on and so forth. But more than that, I think this is what exactly the things that a Palestinian want in current status quo. Because of why? Because they doesn't even want to unite it with Israel. Even if they are die, for example, they will go to Jannah, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm trying to say here, it is even better for us to support what Palestinian want in status quo. Instead, you are betrayal your promise to protect themselves because you are creating more than that. I'm still questioning why opposition side of the house believe that the Palestinian people want to do your way. Because right now, Palestinian had the Uni Emirat Arab because they seems betray their agenda for the united and the protection, ladies and gentlemen. Because Uni Emirat Arab seems like justifying any kind of evil agenda by Israel in the past, like killing so many people, like doing a bombing and so on and so forth. I don't think it's going to be favorable at the end of the day. I think solidarity will not going to be happen under this house because notice that Palestinian people not having interest to cooperate with Israel, which is impossible to happen under opposition side of the house. I think it's better for us to stand in government side of the house because even if the because progressivity is still going to happen, and even if they are there, for example, they die in the pride condition and they will go to Jannah, we're very proud to propose.
The third speaker of the government team spans 7 minutes 27 seconds. I would like to call the third speaker of the opposition team, Mr. Rahul Krishna, here.
Am I audible? Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Honorable judges and everyone in this debate, I would like to prove that as the third speaker of this government team, I would like to give the strengths for my arguments that has been delivered by my teammates and also show the weakness that has been delivered by the government side of this house, ladies and gentlemen. Since the first second of this debate, the government side of this house has failed to make strong foundations of their arguments. Why? It can be proven by the several questions, ladies and gentlemen. The first question, what do you mean with the regretting the normalization? Since the first day, They gave no explanations, especially definitions about what kind of regulating the normalizations itself. Second, what kind of normalizations that do you mean? Since the first beginning of the dispute, we cannot find any definitions given by the government side of this house. And another question is, why do you regret the normalizations when OIC proposed to create universal harmony? I really hope that the government side of this house would like to answer these kind of questions, because we really need to pay attention to the goal of the OIC itself to create a universal harmony. The another questions about how will you implementing your regulations, ladies and gentlemen. There is no explanations once again. That is why they gave no strong foundations of the arguments given. Furthermore, what is mechanism brought by the government side of this house? This is the biggest questions given by us. How will they regret this kind of emotions, because they brought no mechanism, so we cannot believe all of their arguments. Second, how can we make sure that is effective to be applied, ladies and gentlemen? Another questions on what arguments before standing at, they had no strong foundations of their arguments since the first seconds of the arguments. Because of that, there was no fulfillment of government roles in here, ladies and gentlemen. We need to underline that. And then I would like to ask about the definitions. What kind of relationship that happens between OIC and Israel? Actually, there was no explanations between the relationship between OIC and Israel itself, ladies and gentlemen. They just started their arguments without any strong foundations. I am so sorry. And then the normalizations did not well prepared. It is what has been delivered by the first speaker of the government. And I have a questions in here. Why is it not prepared? Ladies and gentlemen, in fact, we know that process of normalization takes time from diplomacy side and any other side. It is why by being regret this motion, then we just create further relationship for both. That is why they should not make any arguments about this, because they are just not standing on their positions itself, ladies and gentlemen. They just crumbling down their own roles of the government side of this house. Another rebuttal that I would like to give is about, they stated that they regret the normalizations of these motions because it will disturb the agenda of Uni Emirat Arab. And how can the normalizations of OIC and Israel disturbing Uni Emirat Arab agenda, ladies and gentlemen? Of course, we need an explanations about it. As the government know, in fact, that in 2020, in this year, Uni Emirat Arab has signed the normalization of OIC and Israel. It is the data. Beside of that, they must have concern. I mean, in here, the Uni Emirat Arab must have concerns about things which are related with their country before being the decisions. Before make any decision. That is why we believe that they should not say that it can disturbing their agenda, ladies and gentlemen. More data cited from United States government. United States have also signed the normalizations of OIC and Israel, ladies and gentlemen. In conclusions of this, both countries are great countries, ladies and gentlemen. We should realize that if these two of great countries make our countries realize about the advantages that will be given by not regretting the normalizations, then why we should regret this kind of a normalizations itself, ladies and gentlemen? I would like to give my rebuttal for the second speaker for the government team, ladies and gentlemen. They stating that member state is already enough to solve the problem that happens on Muslims country because of that, but then we cannot believe it because you prove no data where OIC members that successfully work together to solve a problem. Until the last second of third speaker's speech, we still cannot find any data given to prove that OIC members have successfully worked together to solve one problems. If you have any questions later, you can ask me. Meanwhile, our arguments about creating bigger chance by not regretting normalizations never been crumbled down by the government side of the house, please.
Number one, you need to engage why the broad relationship in internal OIC member will not going to happen. Number two, what kind of the progressivity that happened because the Uni Emirat Arab sign that you're trying to claim in this debate because your argument very assumptive.
First questions, we never say that we will make any further relationships between OIC member state itself, and the answers for second questions will be answered later on in my strengthening when I'm strengthening my team's arguments. Meanwhile, our arguments about creating bigger chance by not regretting normalization has never been crumbled on by the government side of this house. We even provide about what advantages they provide by regretting the motions, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to give any rebuttals more for the second speaker of the government side of this house. They stated that relationship between OIC and Israel bias to OIC member state. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a strong argument, but unfortunately, it cannot stand. Why? The first reasons, they never give any explanations of how the relationship, the normalization relationship between OIC and Israel will bring bias to OIC member state itself, ladies and gentlemen. We need to underline it. The second question is, what kind of bias that will be bring by normalizing this kind of a relationship? The third question is, in what side it will bring bias for OIC member state, ladies and gentlemen. I am so sorry, but no argument, but there is no data, so then no argument can stand without data. So we are just scrambling down their argument, ladies and gentlemen. Moreover, they say that we neglect the Palestine, but we never did that, ladies and gentlemen. By not regretting the normalizations, we actually creating harmony for universal peace as what the goals of OIC itself, ladies and gentlemen. The last rebuttal for the third speakers, they stated that United Emirates Arab has big power. That is why if a country that has a big power realize the advantages that will be given, that is why we should not regret this kind of emotion, ladies and gentlemen. For the strengthening of my team's arguments, we have told you before that there are many advantages that will be given if we are not regretting these motions first. Uni Emirat Arab see the opportunities for trade and more from creating relationship with Israel, ladies and gentlemen. Uni Emirat Arab has been a place where lots of people built a great military power and business. According to the data by United Arab government, F-35 and A-18G steel fighter may be received by Arab because of the help from the US as the creator. And if we are not regretting the normalization relationship between Israel, which has been an ally for both sides, ladies and gentlemen, for Uni Emirat Arab and Israel, and then we may give advantages for OIC in the military field. In the military field itself, ladies and gentlemen, we provide better military services for both sides, so then there is no such thing being neglected by us, and then we keep going to fight for the harmony of this world, ladies and gentlemen. A strong bilateral relationship between USA and Israel may help OIC in solving OIC member state problem in economic and military field point of view, and that this has been delivered by my second speaker, ladies and gentlemen. So we really believe that there is no arguments from us that has been trampled on by the government teams, but unfortunately we have so many questions for the government teams because they gave no foundation, no strong foundations to delivering their arguments, ladies and gentlemen. We believe our argument stands still until the last seconds of my speech. Thank you.
The third speaker of the opposition team, from 7 minutes 47. We invite the regular speaker of the opposition team, Ms. Sania Indri. Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the point that we need to prove in here, how then the normalization relationship between OIC member state and Israel will brings good or will brings no harm to the relationship between the member state, also Israel itself. But back then, ladies and gentlemen, since the very first beginning of their speech in our friends in government side of the house don't really give us indication on what kind of OIC member state is that only Palestine or OIC member state in general, but back then, when they are coming up in the second speaker, they suddenly change this kind of limitation or IC member states into Palestine only. That is actually the fatal thing that did by the government side of the house. Meanwhile, when they are saying there will be bias between the OIC member states when this kind of relationship normalized between OIC member state also Israel, already we already answered that with the balance between OIC member states and Israel will do between the agreement that they will build up in this kind of relationship, which is it will not only making one side in something unprosper, ladies and gentlemen. So that is actually the point of we already deliver. Meanwhile, when they said that normalization will bring a lot of harm for OIC member states, especially Palestine, but back then our question in here, if only no normalizations mean the same condition as before, the same condition means no further solution and left the problem unsolved, then what kind of thing, rather than normalization relationship between OIC member state and Israel, kind of like solution, they don't really bring that kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen. So that is why when they are only saying the solution diplomacy, but back then diplomacy is actually something related to normalization relationship. So because of that, we as the negative side of the house totally agree with their agree with this kind of motion, because they really provide us with they stand in our point, ladies and gentlemen, in the term of diplomacy. Based on those kind of situation, we as the government side of the house still agree with this negative side of the house, totally disagree with this kind of motion. This house regret the normalization between OIC member state and Israel. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, what we have to prove under our side is first, why normalize the relationship between OIC member state and Israel is actually harm and not favorable within the OIC member state itself. And second, what is the interest of OIC member state itself, and why with this normalization will achieve the interest, and what with that this normalization will achieve the interest of OIC member state itself. We already explained to you that the normalization is where you can have a more cooperation in terms of economic politics, and etc. This actually will give more power and support towards the Israel itself. But in the end of the day, look at that Israel actually cannot cooperate at all to achieving our goals. Therefore, we regret this. But opposition side of the house only play on the best scenario where they cannot prove to you when Israel is tend to have more control with the UIC member itself is still okay under the side of the house. So they cannot win this debate actually. So they actually have to prove first why with this normalization it will help the IC member to achieve the goals of IC state member. And second, they have to prove on how with this normalization will also not make Israel to have much control on the economy, politics, and etc. Even if India and Israel have a control and become more powerful, how is still okay under their side of the house? And also they have to prove on how the unity will exist under the side of the house and not going to be biased. And they have also to prove how Palestine will not be jealous because there's a backlash interest with this normalization, and also how Palestine can survive if this normalization still exists. They also okay. Thank you.
Thank you for all the response. For now, we will come to the adjudicator for global education, Miss Ruta Batari.
Just give me a minute. So that was a riveting session by both the government and the opposition. Some well-made points on the prospects of normalization and what it can result in. Just to give you an overview of what I could gather from the government side, they were very strong in terms of setting up what they look at as normalization. So they defined the ambit within which their arguments were to follow. So for them, normalization was straightforward, was the resumption of good, healthy relations. They very distinctively pointed out that there are definite benefits to the normalization, not just to the current states who are engaging with Israel, but OIC at large. And in that respect, they highlighted that economics of trade, in particular military cooperation, could be the way forward, and that it probably could mean great things for OIC countries. The opposition obviously, sorry, that was the opposition. The government obviously talked about that the normalization would not actually help because it is very unilaterally leaning towards Israel, and that it would bolster up Israel's prowess, and that it would not help the current conflict within which it is embroiled. And that more significantly, that it will create a divide within OIC, which is obviously counterproductive. What OIC finds where OIC finds itself coming together is the fact that they have a similar agenda, and Palestine is a very core part of that agenda. And so, if there's a division between OIC countries, they're inferring that we have to question the fundamental values on which OIC is propped up. Much of the following debates were like an extension. Very few new points were raised subsequently by each team. However, the opposition team managed to raise a couple of new points in terms of how, in terms of elaborating the nuances of the cooperation between the blocs, in terms of the exchange of students, human resources, so on and so forth. That was really good to hear. Apart from that, the closing by the government was really nice. They questioned, in an upfront manner the opposition's the proposals by the opposition, telling them that nothing tangible was provided by them, which was nice because they questioned one of their weaknesses. If you're talking about the relationships normalizing between the blocs of the OIC countries, what is the proof? How are you processing the entire thing to play out? The another thing they pointed out was the fact that OIC should not be treated as like one collective bloc, because the countries that are moving toward normalization are just like a tiny group of committee of nations, and all of the areas that they've identified in terms of where prosperity is guaranteed is already achieved by some of the countries over there. So all in all, it was a good insight into the entire debate. I was surprised a little about the fact that the elephant in the room with this motion was the fact that the normalization process itself. The recent normalization process is very specific. I was expecting some kind of speculation on the normalization process itself. The involvement of the kind of actors, how only the US was involved, how one part of let's say UAE was involved, right? How Palestine was not involved in the normalization process. All of these things could have been leveraged very well by both the government and the opposition, which it wasn't really well done. The other thing that I thought was something that they could have leveraged in kind of creating substance in their arguments respectively was how it would have impacted the conflict of Israel and Palestine, and in a larger picture how it would have impacted the Middle East and Africa, which anybody who understands where the OIC geography spreads, it's there largely. So in perhaps linking the stability or the security or the insecurity or the instability of the region or the countries involved, I think both parties could have leveraged even stronger arguments. But all in all, great work by everyone. I cannot wait to assess all of you individually, but good luck.
Thank you, Ms. Rutaba, for the verbal explication. Next, we will hear verbal explication from Mr. Miroki.
Okay, thank you for the time. Yeah, my comment is probably same with Sister Rutaba. Yeah, government and opposition already explained their insight related to the case. And then, of course, when we are seeing or observe how the deal between United States and Israel. United States take an initiative to insist that we are a deal broker for peace, and then peace can maintain in Middle East through economic instrument. But however, during the peace process, those who are must be involved in peace process does not involve. For example, when Trump said that we are in the process for creating the deal of century, to insist that the initiative is very different from what has been done from previous regime, for example, Obama and so on. So Trump wanted to say that I only can say that I am the peacemaker in Middle East. The core of problem is the economy, and the instrument for that problem is economy. But however, in the field, when we become a mediator, we need to hear both parties, Palestine in one side and then Israel in other side. But what America has done is to make a deal between Israel with other countries, those who surrounded in Middle East, for example, United Arab Emirates, and then lastly in Sudan, and so on. So America doesn't touch the core of the problem. However, from both parties, from government and opposition, already explained their stance. Yeah, of course, it's not easy to think out of your stand. Yeah, because this is a debate. This debate is allow you to train yourself to become an ambassador, to become a politician. Yeah, to share your ideas based on the topic that has been given by the committee. And the highlight already mentioned by Sister Rutaba, so I will not continue an additional. And then I will make a summary in the form, yeah, for adjudication. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you to Mr. Sharon Rofi. Next, we will hear verbal adjudication from Kak Gilang Agiman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, adjudicator, and thank you for the excellent and insightful debate. And I really agree with what the adjudicators, the previous adjudicators said. There are many points to be appreciated, but I ask your forgiveness, but I will focus more on the points of criticism. But don't assume that I do not appreciate your efforts. It's been wonderful, but it's easier to look at the weakness than the strength. Now look at the motion firstly, okay? I will read again the motion. This House regret the normalization relationship between OIC member state and Israel, right? So we need to have, I think there is a kind of like a division on understanding the motion. Do we regret normalization between OIC member states as individual states? Or do we regret normalization between OIC as an organization and Israel, right? And I think the opposition would want to frame it as if normalization between OIC as an organization with Israel, because in principle, OIC member states is actually pro-normalization, but normalization when peace is achieved. So since 2002, we have something called the Arab Peace Initiative, in which practically all Arab countries, and this eventually endorsed by OIC, saying that we will leave the method of, because there's been kind of like decades of bloodshed and it doesn't, get us anywhere. Basically, the Arab countries and Muslim countries are saying, yes, you are pro-peace, but get out from the West Bank, get out from Gaza, give the Palestinians independence, then we shall talk about peace, then we should normalize, right? So as an organization, OIC is actually pro-normalization. But at the current stage, the condition is not in such a way that would allow independence, and hence why normalization is um, is not allowable. And hence, I think the government team, which would regret this, should very much say to the opposition that we regret kind of like the betrayal of these individual member states, because actually, if we have agreed collectively, then we can talk about, I think the opposition talking about making an MOU, right? Make it an MOU with Israel. Yes, we'll normalize, but you have to agree with such, and such requirements. I think the third speaker of the government team does raise about, correctly point at how, not all of OIC member states agree with normalization. I think that's very great. But I think that you should very make it clear in the very beginning that we will not discuss, OIC as an organization, but more of like individual states trying to normalize, because it really does no good to the Palestinians, because it breaks the rank of the OIC. Now, I would like to focus, I will give like 3 points of criticism for each the team, if I may. I hope I have enough time. First of all, I hope that the government team would raise what is the raison d'etre, or the reason of existence of IC, right? The reason of existence of IC in 1969 is because there is an arson attack, like someone would like to burn the Al-Aqsa. So really, Palestine is at the heart of the OIC. One cannot be a member of IC if you talk only about economy, if you only talk about security. No, at the heart of OIC is Palestine. So you should actually focus on that, because the opposition team would like to talk about the material benefits of normalization, right? You're gonna get more trade, so on and so forth. And they do it in quite a convincing way, but I think you should make very clear, yes, there are benefits of normalization. We cannot deny that. Of course we can get security, of course we can get, but what is the reason of our existence, right? I think the third speaker of the opposition talked about the aim of OIC being to promote universal harmony, right? I think you should rebut that, because this is not the purpose of OIC. If you want to talk about universal harmony, go to the UN. OIC is not about, I'm sorry, I mean, we have to be very clear, Islamic identity in OIC is very strong. So we have to be clear on that. I think the government team fails to address that part. Secondly, I think, well, the government does quite a good job, but you can kind of like elaborate further on how, diplomacy does not work. Normalizing, in what way will normalization kind of like help the Palestinians? Because I think by far Israel the only language that Israelis understand are the language of pressure, only the language of boycott, only the language of, I think I have found no empirical basis to say that, talking with Israel would kind of like persuade them to change their position, because they are now currently having the stronger position. Yeah, so that are my point for the government. Now for the opposition, I think that the opposition stresses very much on the material aspect, right? But as I've mentioned, the immaterial aspect, the symbolic aspect of the solidarity is very much important. I think you should focus on making a clear case on how normalization would actually help the Palestinian cause by such and such. For example, I will tell you one strong argument. You can say, look at Turkey. Turkey has a relation with Israel. Anytime Turkey threatens Israel to cut its diplomatic relation, Israel kind of like do something, because Turkey has a relation with Israel. So if Turkey criticizes, if Turkey say, I want to take my ambassador, Israel is a bit afraid of that, because they already have a diplomatic relations. It's a different dynamic with Indonesia. Indonesia can say whatever it wants in the UN, but it does not exert the same pressure as Turkey, because Turkey already have a diplomatic relation. So you can say that by normalizing, we can, yes, we are still pro-Palestinian, but we will use normalization to kind of like pressure Israel more. Also, I think, yeah, I think you also need to emphasize very much on the future. Yeah, you should see that you should make a very strong case that I think you kind of touched a bit, how we have done this no normalization for a long time, right? But we have done nothing, right? So you could kind of like speculate, right, what will happen if normalization. Although this can be a point of weakness as well, because speculations oftentimes does not work. We can be optimistic, but if on the ground Israel still have the stronger voice, then it's a bit difficult to argue against it. So yeah, so those are my points. It's purely matter substance. I do not want to talk much about the method or language, or perhaps one about the method. I would really suggest you to speak slowly. I think I know that you want to speak a lot of things, but if by speaking in such a fast manner I cannot it's not clear to me, then how can I give you credits, you know? So I think it's more important to have, let's say, only 2 or 3 points, deliver it very clearly, very slowly, but make sure that the message is received by the adjudicator, because you can have the most brilliant ideas, you can have the best of grammar or language skills, but if the audience cannot receive your message clearly, then we as the adjudicator would feel very sorry, but we cannot give as much credits as we want to. So those are my feedbacks.
Thank you to Kak Gilang for the verbal adjudicators. Thank you for adjudicators for the verbal comments. Thank you to participant and adjudicator. The information about the winner will be announced tonight by group chat. I hereby close this round.
So